Hello, I'm Nora, and welcome back to Novels with Nora. Today I'm here with Cheerio, my little dog. Today's video is a book tag, and this is very exciting for me specifically because I remember when I first started watching BookTube, a lot of the videos that were like super popular at the time were book tags, and they've really like faded out. Like we rarely see them anymore. We have like the BookTube newbie tag and the like mid-year book freakout tag. Those are the only two that I feel like still get made with any consistency. So when I was just scrolling on YouTube yesterday looking for something to watch, and Thoughts on Tomes, one of my favorite fantasy sci-fi creators here on BookTube, had posted a new book tag that they had created, I was thrilled, and I knew I will be participating in this one. This is called the Get to Know My Taste book tag. They were talking about in the video, because it was Thoughts on Tomes and then like two other channels that I'm not familiar with, I believe. They created this tag for the purpose of like bringing back the sense of community. They were talking about how there's not really a sense of community with these book tags anymore, because book tags used to be like someone would post them and they would tag like 5 people, and those 5 people would do the tag, and so we would know like a lot of reading information about all of these creators, and we just like don't have that anymore. And one of my big things that I want with this channel is a sense of community. So when I saw this tag, I said, oh, this is perfect for me. But also what they're doing with this is every video that gets posted with this tag is getting compiled into a playlist so that you can go through and like really learn more about all these different creators and like their reading tastes, their preferences, some of their favorite books, so that you can find new creators, because sometimes it's really hard to find someone without having to go through like years and even like months worth of content to just try and figure out if they like align with your reading tastes. So I think that this tag is genius, first of all, and also it has some really fun questions. So I'm excited to dive in, especially because when I used to watch book tags as just like a viewer of BookTube, especially when I was like 12, honestly, so I didn't have a channel, but I would watch these book tags and I would go through the questions and think like, oh, what would my answer be? What book would I have for this? And now that I actually get to like participate in it, I am thrilled. So let's just dive right in and get started. I have my computer over here with all of the questions pulled up, and I will also put all of the questions in the description in case you want to participate, or if you just want to know what the questions are, and then you can like skip through for each question. So our first question is, how do you rate books? Give a quick rundown of how you do your star ratings, or if you don't use star ratings, how do you evaluate books? For me, it's purely based on vibes. I really evaluate books based on how they make me feel. So my ratings are like, yes, this book got me in my feels, had me on the edge of my seat, had my heart beating. You'll notice a lot of my reviews are quite short, mainly because I just talk about, I really loved this, I loved how it made me feel, I loved the themes in it. I give very brief reviews, and I think we'll touch on that in the next question as well, but a 5-star for me is a book that I absolutely loved. Now, I feel like I need to get better at my ratings, because sometimes I give 5 stars to things that like looking back I'm like, you know, compared to my other 5 stars, that one doesn't really hold up, but because I absolutely loved my reading experience of it, I give it a 5-star. So I feel like my rating is something I do need to get better at, but I'm also a very critical reader when it comes to certain topics. So it's very interesting the way I rate, and I would like to get more professional, I guess, at it, especially as I get deeper into this space. I would like to get better and like more critical with my reviews, but like a 1-star I almost never give, because if I feel like a book's gonna be 1-star, I pretty much just DNF it. So the lowest rating you'll typically see from me is like a 2.5, and that's for something that like I wanted to see how it was gonna end, but I did not enjoy it and wish I had not spent my time on it. A 3 for me is like middle of the road, like I enjoyed it, it was fine, wouldn't necessarily go back to it. A 4 is like, I really enjoyed this, had a lot of fun with it. There are just a few things that I wish had been slightly different, or I know could have been different and would have made my reading experience better. And then a 5 is, this is fantastic, absolutely loved it, no notes, perfect, beautiful, kiss on the lips. So that's how I rate. Our next question is, how do you approach reviewing books? What's your review style? Are you analytical, emotional, casual, or structured? And for me, it depends on where that review is going. So like if I'm reviewing an arc, which I don't do very frequently, but if I am, then I tend to do a more structured review where I'll do like a little blurb about the book, like a little synopsis type thing. And then I'll do more like, I really like the characters, I really like the writing, or like characters, writing, plot, and like really break it down. Where if it's just going on like my Instagram, my Bookstagram, then it's usually just a shorter, like I really enjoyed this aspect, didn't love this aspect, or, you know, just like shorter things. And then again, I really like to talk about how the book made me feel. So If it was like a sad, like deep emotional book, I'll talk about like it really pulled at my heartstrings. If it was a really happy, like cutesy book, I'll be like had me kicking my feet and giggling. So that's kind of how I do my reviews. But then also if it's a review here on BookTube, I'm a lot more wordy with it because I always have a lot to say, but it's easier for me to talk through my thoughts and feelings about books than it is for me to write it down. So you'll notice that when I talk about books here, I'm much more wordy than my actual reviews. So there's that. But yeah, I mainly talk about how books made me feel. So like recent reviews, I'm thinking I've reviewed an arc of Say a Little Prayer, which is like a romance contemporary YA novel, and it was an arc. So my review of that one was like a lot more in depth, and I talked about the writing and the characters and the plot. I also recently read The Next Best Fling, and that's just like an adult romance, and I had so much fun with that. But I read it for a video, so I talked about my thoughts in a video format. Really great video, you should watch it. It was my Buzzwordathon vlog, and I just kind of talked about how had me kicking my feet and giggling and had me on the edge of my seat with like the drama and the twists. But then if you read my review, it's kind of just like super close to my perfect romance. Really enjoyed it. So I would like to get better at also writing reviews. I do a written review for every book that I read. They're just not necessarily all encompassing of my thoughts. So if you're really looking for how I feel about a book, my YouTube is the place to come, because I feel like I can be more articulate with my words spoken versus written. So again, something that I want to get better at is writing better reviews. So that is kind of like a process I would like to undergo, because especially as a future librarian, I feel like I need to know better how to describe and explain my thoughts on books. So something I do want to work on. All right, next question. What is the book that made you a reader? Whether it was your first favorite or the one that got you hooked, what book started it all? And I have two. The first is Violet Wings, which I'll put here. I read this book from my library. I was real big into the Tinkerbell movies as a kid, and I had like the books too. So like anything that like had fairies, I was like, yeah, I'm in. Which is super interesting because now I like don't really like things with fae, so interesting. But I loved this book. I remember it kind of vividly, like certain scenes. So we follow our main character, and she is a fairy, but she's living in like the human world, and there's like drama going down, and she has to like hide from certain people who want to use her for bad things. And this was like really the book that got me into like fantasy. It was that coupled with the 13 Treasures series. And this is, well, I guess it's a trilogy. This is also about fairies, where it's a human girl that we follow, and like the fairies are like these evil little creatures, and she can see them, but like other people can't. And her family is like, girl, you're making things up, stop it. So they send her to live with her grandma, but she like refuses to pretend like she can't see them. So there's like a mystery about another girl who went missing, having to do with the fairies. So I really enjoyed, and I want to reread this series because I have all three of them and I really love them. And so these books are really what got me into fantasy. This and then Violet Wings, yeah, they did it for me. I don't remember reading anything really before that. Like my parents always read to me when I was younger. We always had books in the house. We were always going to the library. My middle school had like, we would go to the library every week and get new things. So I was like always reading, but those are the two books that I remember most vividly, especially getting me into fantasy, because fantasy is the genre I read most. So I feel like we can attribute it to those two books. That segues nicely into our next question. Do you have a genre niche? Are there certain genres you gravitate towards, or do you read widely across genres? And had you asked me this a few months ago, I would have been like, oh, fantasy, sci-fi, that's it. Like, that's what I read. And yes, that's still true, but I'm definitely branching out more into just like literary fiction and horror specifically. And I'm really enjoying those branchings outs that I'm doing because I'm having a lot of fun and I'm reading a lot of really great things. And I think being on BookTube is part of the reason that I'm starting to branch out, because fantasy and sci-fi are always going to have my heart. That's always going to be my favorite genres. But I'm definitely starting to read more widely and casting my net more widely, if you will. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. So here you'll find like fantasy, sci-fi for sure, but then also I'm starting to branch out into romance and like literary fiction and horror, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So who knows? Next we have, do you generally prefer character-driven or plot-driven stories? And I feel like this is a hard question for me because I like them both if they're done well. A character-driven story I think is harder to do well because you really have to build up that character, but if it's done well, it's amazing. Where a plot-driven story I feel like is a little bit easier to do because it's easier to come up with like a really enticing plot and have kind of like bland characters. So I feel like in that way, I do prefer a character-driven story just because it tends to showcase the strength of the writer more. But I definitely prefer both. Like, I'm thinking of a lot of my favorite books, and they rely on plot and characters, having really interesting characters full of depth within really, really interestingly plotted books. So both, I guess. But I feel like when a character is done really well, I tend to notice that more than a plot. So maybe character? I guess we could go with that. Okay, the next question gets into more specific books. What's a book you love so much that you don't care if others don't like it? What's that one book that you love enough for everyone? And I have to say, that book for me, Twin Crowns by Catherine Doyle and Catherine Weber. I got an ARC of this book when I was still in high school, and I read it because I didn't get sent a whole lot of ARCs, so when I did, I was reading them, and I absolutely loved it. I went out and bought a copy on release day, and I've bought the books as they come out because this is a trilogy, so release day for each subsequent books, I was at the Barnes & Noble getting myself a copy. This book follows our two twins, Rose and Wren. Wren is a witch, and witches have been all but like hunted from this land. They live in like secret in this little like cove area. And then Rose is the princess of this land. However, they're twins, and they don't know it yet when we first start the book. And so it's about them trying to like swap places. The witches are trying to put Wren on the throne to bring witches back into the land and like bring magic back. And so we follow Wren trying to step into this like role of the princess, and Rose stepping back from her role as the princess and learning more about being a witch. And it is just so wonderful. And the authors are sisters-in-law, and I love the way that their writing like works so well together. This is one of the few books I've read by two authors that I like, yeah, that works. And the side characters and the plot, it just, oh my god, read this book. Like, again, I love this book so much. I have special editions of all 3 copies. I love this book. It's my baby, truly. Like, I genuinely love this enough for everyone because it's a book that like, it has a fandom, but it's kind of like a smaller fandom that you have to like seek out. But if you do, oh, we are small but mighty. This book is just so good. The characters are just so wonderful, and they really do feel, I don't have a sister, but I imagine this is what it would be like to find out you have a sister after a long time, because like they argue with each other, they don't really get along all the time because they come from such different worlds, but when they come together, oh, beautiful. Love this book. I love it enough for everyone, but I also wish that everyone loved it. The next question kind of builds on that last one, and that is, what's a book you love so much that if someone doesn't like it, you know your reading tastes don't align? The book or books where difference of opinion is a strong indicator of different reading preferences. And I have 2 that I feel like really encapsulate my reading taste. The first being Contagion by Erin Bowman. This is a sci-fi horror set in space about like this zombie outbreak. And this, to me, if you don't like the space horror and like zombie aspects of this, then our reading tastes aren't going to align, because one of my like niche interests in books are like space horror, like horror books set in space where the space itself isn't the horror, but what's happening in space makes it horror, if that makes sense. And this, so like there's space travel and it's like normalized, like we can travel through space, like that's totally fine, but they get stuck on this planet that has these like zombie like creatures, and so being in space with no way out contributes to the horror but is itself not the horror. And if you don't like that, then our reading tastes probably aren't going to align, because that's something that I love so much. And this is YA, and it does feel like a little bit juvenile at points, but I don't even care because I love it so much. And this is one of the books that really got me into space horror, so I feel like if you don't like this, that means you probably also don't like other space horror, potentially. And so I feel like that kind of eliminates a whole like subset of books that I enjoy reading. Now, it could be a case if you don't like this because you want it to be more horror, and in that case, totally fine. But I love this book so much, and I feel like it really encapsulates a whole portion of the type of books that I really like to read. So if you don't like this, the chances of us having super similar reading tastes decrease quite drastically. But similarly, I also have The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah for this question, because this is more of like the fantasy realm. I really love fantasy novels that are inspired by other cultures. So this one is inspired by the Arabian tale that inspired Aladdin, inspired by the same story. And I absolutely love this. This is one of those books that, like I mentioned, has really strong characters, but also a really strong plot. So I feel like this, where Contagion encapsulates my like sci-fi horror taste, this encapsulates my fantasy taste. And if you don't like this, then we're definitely not going to get along, because this is exactly what I love in my fantasy novels. So if you don't like this, our reading tastes are probably quite different, at least in the fantasy genre, because this is what I want my fantasy novels to be, like all of them. So if you don't like it, oops, maybe not for you. The next question is the only one in this challenge that I don't particularly love, and it's what is in your trash pocket? What books, tropes, or themes that you know are bad but you love them anyway? And I don't really have an answer for this because I feel like bad is subjective, and I don't think that there's anything really that I could say that's like, oh yeah, that's bad. The closest I could say is like, I really like reading middle grade books, but those aren't bad. They're just not for my age group, but also who's to tell me what I can and can't read, you know? So I don't really have an answer for this question. Moving on. Do you have any deal breakers in books? Something that if present immediately turns you off from a book? And I have quite a few. Pregnancy, when the plot does not revolve around pregnancy. I think that books about like motherhood and expecting and being pregnant, totally valid. But when I'm reading a book and all of a sudden someone becomes pregnant, I'm like, no, not what I signed up for. I personally think that pregnancy is the most horrifying thing that can happen to someone's body. It horrifies me, like truly beyond words. I cannot explain to you how much it like scares me. And so I don't really want to read about it. If I'm going into a book knowing that that's what it's about, then I can, that's fine. But if I'm reading a book, especially like a romance, and all of a sudden she's pregnant, I'm like, no, not for me, thank you. And I feel like similarly, violence against women simply for the sake of violence. And this is specifically in books written by men, which I don't read a whole lot of, but I just hate when, like, for shock value, we're putting in violence against women. Like, don't do that. We don't need that. Stop that. And I also hate when, like, male authors write women in just like really awful ways. Like, I don't even need to explain. You know what I'm talking about. We don't need that. So I don't really read a lot of male authors as it is. And if I do and they're writing about women, I'm just, why must we be doing that? So that's where I'm at with that. Okay, next. What's a strong opinion you have about a book released within the last year, whether it's overrated, underrated, or just a take you need to share? Now, this question really made me think because I read mostly backlist books. So I even just trying to rack my brain for a book released within this past year. And I came to the conclusion that I don't really have an unpopular opinion, or I guess I don't really have a strong opinion about books released because if I don't like it, someone else is going to like it, So I feel like I don't really have an opinion in that way. But when I was thinking about book releases, my mind went to the release of Wings of Starlight by Allison Saft. Not for the book itself, but for what happened with this release. So it was announced and there was like a lot of hype for it, at least from what I saw. And like I said, if you recall from the beginning of this video, I am a Tinkerbell girly. Growing up, I loved the Tinkerbell movies. So when I heard that this was getting announced, which is the love story of Queen Clarion and Lord Mallory from Secret of the Wings, yeah, I was going to be sat for this. However, I guess the publisher clearly did not anticipate this level of anticipation for this book because it sold out almost immediately everywhere. My Barnes & Noble sold out online of these books. I had to call my Barnes & Noble several times and ask, like, do you have any copies? And they were like, no, sorry. I got lucky in how I got my copy because I showed up to get a different book and I asked, I was like, do you happen to have one? And they're like, we just got our shipment in today. So she went and opened the box for me. But I just think it's crazy that a book that like especially comes from a fandom that's huge, like the Tinkerbell movies, there's a lot of them and they're very popular. And for some reason they didn't think to order enough copies of this book. Like, was the publisher just so out of touch that they didn't realize that there was going to be such a demand for it? So really what I want to talk about here is the fact that I feel like publishers just have not been very in tune with their readers lately. And I think this also was seen with the Oathbound release. And there's a bigger conversation to be had there about authors of color, specifically Black authors, not getting the same press and attention as white authors. But I feel like these two books, obviously very different books, Wings of Starlight and Oathbound, but they both have giant fandoms attached to them. The publishers of them should have known better than to order just like such a small amount and not do anything for the release. Like, we got Barnes & Noble exclusive editions of both of them. So clearly there was some knowledge there that they were going to be big releases. So why were they not treated as such? That's the bone I have to pick. Okay, next question is, what do you look for in writing? What makes a book stand out to you? Is it prose style, themes, voice, structure, or something else? This question was hard for me because I just like a well-written book. And I feel like that's not too much to ask for. I will say I do like a mixed media novel. I do really enjoy that. Like Stardust Thief doesn't seem like it's mixed media, but it has these little like inserts where they're like telling a story in it. And so they're on this like parchment thing. And so it's like a break between the actual story to tell a different story that still relates. And so I really like stuff like that that's thrown in. But I also just feel like I like a strong narrative voice. I like when it feels like the author sat down and knew what they were trying to say. And if there's like theming and messaging in the book, which all books have, I like it for it to be consistent throughout and not just like super heavy-handed at one point or another, you know? So I just feel like strong voice is what I like to see. Because if I'm reading and it's like the author feels like they don't know where they're going with the story, then I feel like I'm not going to enjoy it as much. Next, how do you decide what to read next? Do you plan ahead, mood read, or follow external factors? I am a mood reader through and through. Truly, what I read next is just, if I finish a book and I'm like, I kind of want something fantasy, I'll go to my shelves and I'll pick something fantasy. Like, there is no real thought process behind it. It's truly just, what am I in the mood for? Now, I think since being on BookTube, obviously I've not been here super long, but since being here, I definitely feel like I plan my reading a little bit ahead. However, I'm still like in tune with the mood reading. Like, I did a romance reading vlog, so I knew I was reading only romance novels, but I let myself pick them. As I finished one, I would pick the next one. So it wasn't like, here's what I'm reading. It was, well, here's what I'm reading now. And then I have a few options. That's one of the main ways I'll end up in a reading slump, is if I force myself to read things that I'm not super interested in, or like set myself strict, this is what I'm reading now and this is what I'm reading next. So a lot of what I read is purely mood-based. We only have 3 questions left. Where do you get inspiration for your BookTube content? What sparks your video ideas? Other creators, trends, personal reading experiences? So I feel like for me, it's mostly my own reading tastes. So like the books that I'm already reading are what I want to talk about. But then also I'm very inspired by what other creators are doing, specifically my favorite creators, and also trends. I really like being so entrenched in this community and seeing what other people are up to. So like, for example, Books and Lala just posted a video. She's one of my favorite creators. She just posted a video where she opened Goodreads and then just like scrolled through the feed, and the first 5-star and the first 1-star reviews that she saw, she had to read those books. And now I want to do that video because that seems super fun. And also, I think with BookTube, it's very interesting because like I can do the same video. I will not be reading the same books because the people that I follow on Goodreads, and so the things that I'm seeing, completely different. So I think the book sphere and BookTube in specific is really interesting because we can all make the same video, like the same concept, and we'll all be reading different things. And even if we're all reading the same thing, we all have something different to say. And that's something I love about this community. But yeah, a lot of my ideas are from just like my own hobbies and interests, and then also what I see other people doing that I'm like, that seems super fun, I want to do that. So I have a background. My undergrad degree was in women's and gender studies, and now I'm in school to get my master's of library and information science. So I read with like a feminist perspective, which I feel like a lot of women do without even realizing, but I tend to just vocalize that a little bit more. So then I also bring my feminist perspective to my videos. And so like right now I'm filming a video where I'm reading 2 nonfiction books about boobs, which I feel like is not something that you're really going to see on every channel. But so like I really film my own experiences with what I'm reading. I also make I make content about being in grad school, specifically being in grad school for library science, and how that relates to then what I'm reading in my own life, you know, so just things like that. Like, it's really just a lot of my own experiences, as I think every creator does. Okay, next. If you could make any book go viral right now, what would it be? A book that you think deserves more attention, and why? And I'm gonna go with The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. Yeah, read this book. This book is so amazing. It's long and it is a trilogy, but why would you not want that? It is just so amazing. The characters are so fantastic. And even just within book 1, I was so on the edge of my seat and just like, oh my God, what is going to happen next? These characters are crazy because they all have their own unique drives for things. But I think what they don't realize is that they all kind of intersect in a really unique way. And also just, these characters are so amazing. The writing, this is a debut novel and it's amazing. The sequel, The Ashfire King, comes out next month, April 15th. Yeah, I'm so excited. I have an arc. Oh, prepare to be sick of me. I just think that this book, if you read fantasy, you should be reading this book. Because I don't know why you wouldn't. And I don't know, like, maybe I'm just jaded by my own love of this book, but I genuinely cannot think of anything in here that you wouldn't enjoy. Unless you just, like, hate fun. Right? In my review of this one, I was a little bit more like poetic with it, and I said it's a story about stories and love in all its forms, and it truly is. It's about like when you know yourself in one specific context and then that context completely crumbles around you and you have to like relearn who you are. This book is amazing. I love it so much, and I wish that everyone loved it as much as I do, but I love it plenty, so it'll be fine. Okay, and then finally, who are some booktubers with reading tastes similar to your own? Now, I feel like this is an interesting question for me because my reading tastes are very interesting. As you can tell by this stack of books right here, we have a wide variety of things, but my reading taste is heavily influenced by the creators that I watch. So Books and Lala and Riley Marie are my two favorite bookish content creators, and I get a lot of recommendations from them. So you'll notice that a lot of things I read are quite similar to the things they read. So if you like what they read, you'll probably like what I read because it's a lot of the same things. Booktubers with reading tastes similar to my own, I really feel like those are the only two that I can think of because I pull so much inspiration from them. I think those are the two I would say. Yeah, I think really just those two because I've catered my reading taste to be similar to their own. So if you like them, you'll probably like me. I think I'm a lot of fun. Okay, those are all of the questions. I think that this book tag gives you some insight into me as a reader and also me as a yapper because I talked a lot. But I also my little heart is so full being able to finally participate in a book tag. I grew up watching book tags, so finally being able to, like, we had a book tag for everything. I still have a very vivid mental image of Pulling Bananas books doing the Hamilton book tag. Yeah, that's how long I've been here. But I just finally being able to participate in one myself and then like actually post it, I'm giddy. I'm so excited. So thank you, Thoughts on Tomes and the other two creators, for creating this challenge because I loved participating. So again, I will put all of the questions in the description, and you, yeah, that's right, you watching this, you should participate. I'm not going to tag anyone in particular, but if you're seeing this, you should do it because it was a lot of fun. It made me think more about my own reading tastes and the types of things that I'm reading, and then also the type of content that I'm consuming. So even if you're not a creator, but you are a viewer, you should answer some of these questions in the comments. How fun would that be? It would be fun for me because I want to read your responses. But that is all I have for you today. I had a lot of fun filming this. We should bring back the book tag. They're so much fun, and they're really a great way of building community because then we're all answering the same questions and we're all getting to know each other more. So if you're watching this, do this book tag. Okay, thank you for watching. Again, answer some of these questions in the comments if you want, or if you have something to say about something I said. You're like, oh my god, Nora, I love Stardust Thief. Tell me, because I want to know. But other than that, go ahead and like the video. I'd really appreciate it. Subscribe even, that'd be crazy. I'd really appreciate that as well. But otherwise, I will see you in my next video, and thank you so much for watching. Toodaloo!